I'm not going to try to bamboozle you and say that like I had any connection whatsoever to James Earl Jones. I had none. I, like everyone else, adored watching James Earl Jones or hearing James Earl Jones perform. He was very much the voice of God type of power that he conveyed as an actor. I, like so many of you, had forgotten about this. I was 10 years old. In 1993, of course, the Baltimore Orioles hosted the MLB All-Star Game, and the national anthem was not a traditional national anthem whatsoever. Instead, it was the Morgan State University Choir accompanied by the spoken word of James Earl Jones. This is courtesy of MLB. We'll give you a bit of this if you haven't seen it floating around in the last 24 hours. This is just unreal.
Can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, can that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Just gives you chills, man. Just gives you absolute chills. Here we are 31 years later. That was truly incredible. Just an absolutely spectacular concept, and obviously reflecting. It was so unique to have him do it spoken word, kind of reflecting the fact that the song was written here and focusing on the words and it being a poem as much as it is a song. Just truly, truly brilliant stuff from the legendary James Earl Jones, who passed away yesterday. You guys know I'm absolutely obsessed with the film The Sandlot. It is, I don't know how many movies have had a more significant impact on my life, because every year my kids start demanding in like April, Dad, is it time to watch The Sandlot yet? Because they know it's my 4th of July tradition every year. They don't want to wait. They start getting the itch, and I've had the opportunity to chat with our next guest a couple of times, and of course I wanted him to share some reflections on the late great James Earl Jones. He is, of course, the writer, director, and narrator of The Sandlot. He's David Mickey Evans, and he's with us this morning here on GCR. David, it's Glenn in Baltimore. I really appreciate you doing this today. Thank you for taking a couple of minutes for us.
Oh my gosh, Glenn, absolutely. No worries whatsoever.
David, I just, if you could take me back, did you write the part of Mr. Mertle? It was imagining James Earl Jones? Did you have this idea? How did all of this happen? That this, what ultimately was kind of a small character became such an impactful part of an iconic film?
That is a really good question, and the answer, the first part, no. Never wrote it with regard to any ethnicity for that character, Mr. Mertle. He was just Mr. Mertle, this sort of, neighborhood, well, at least all the kids thought, though, bad guy. And we did not have a Mr. Mertle maybe about a week and a half, 2 weeks into production. And my first AD, God rest his soul, Bill Elvin, one of the best that ever lived, says to me, on The Sandlot, as we're doing whatever we're doing, he says, hey, you should get for Mr. Mertle, you should get James Earl Jones. And I laughed at him.
Right.
I said, there's no way I am ever going to get James Earl Jones to be in my little movie. That's so crazy,
David,
Bill.
what you're saying, I feel like people are going to miss this, because now we think of The Sandlot as this iconic film. But it was a small budget film.
Oh yeah, if I spent $8 million on that, I'd be shocked. You know, and for movies, that's nothing.
Right.
You know, I mean, for movies that are intended to go out as, you know, studio releases with major distribution plans and all that, yeah, it's nothing. I mean, there's plenty of indies made. But anyway, the point is, so I say to Bill, that's crazy. You know, I need solutions here, Bill, not, you know, pipe dreams. And he says, no, hang on, I'll call him. I said, what? So he calls him, and he says, blah, 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 blah. And he says, hey, all right, James wants to read the script. So I said, all right. So we sent him the script overnight. And I got a call the next day. And it was Mr. Jones. And it was something like, David, this is James Earl Jones. And I said, yeah. And it really was. I didn't believe him. But anyway, so we talked a little bit about the character, and he brought up something really important. He says, if Mr. Mertle was playing ball, I never would have played with Babe Ruth because it was segregated at the time. I said, that's right. It was the Negro Leagues and the MLB and such. Well, you know, the proto-MLB. And I said, yeah, but Babe Ruth used to barnstorm in the Negro Leagues during the off season. And he says, all right, that makes total sense. So then we fixed up the dialogue, did a couple things, and maybe less than a week later, Mr. Jones showed up. And I've been in the presence of people with massive charisma. You could just feel it coming off them. And nobody had more charisma that I've ever met than James Earl Jones. He was an imposing man in the best possible way because he was such a gracious human being. And he walks onto the set. He's already in costume, and he's standing with Bill Elvin, my first AD. And I'm standing right there, let's say 5 feet away. And I can hear Mr. Jones say to Bill, where's the director? And Bill points at me, and I think I was 28, 27 years old at the time. I was pretty young looking and at that time. And Mr. Jones looks at me for a beat, and then he looks at Bill and he goes, no, seriously, where's the director? And he was serious, Glenn. He did not believe I was the director. So, you know, I shook his hand, and we got down to business, and I'd been working with, 11, 12, and 13-year-old kids in the heat of a Utah summer for however many weeks, and pre-production and, rehearsal and baseball and all that. And I forgot what it was like to, direct an adult. And he just showed up. He was in costume. He took a second to get into character. He goes, okay, I'm ready. We turned the cameras on. One take, done.
Wow.
The man, he was so good and so refined with his profession, his abilities, his acting, that, I've only probably seen one other actor do this, just on a dime, turn from James Earl Jones into the character he was playing. No big, trumpets go off and all like that. It just happens. And it's kind of awe-inspiring to watch. So,
David, what, I don't have I once got to be on the stage as Stevie Wonder was performing. It just worked the night before the Ravens won the Super Bowl. And I had a moment like this. I was with there was LeBron James and Kevin Durant played a basketball game in a tiny college gym here in Baltimore, and I was on the floor.
Wow.
And there's something about that moment of watching a genius, right? Like that up close and personal. Can you describe what it was like for you? As you have a job to do in those moments, obviously as a director, but just watching a truly iconic artist, a genius in their craft, perform right in front of you.
It was kind of astounding. I mean, I had been used to, okay, guys, for all the little kids, let's do this. You move over here, here's your mark, and then you say this, whatever the blocking was or whatever.
Yeah.
And they would do it, and sometimes the little guys, would fall out of character or say a line that wasn't like the way their character would say it or whatever, and I'd say, okay, let's make an adjustment on that line. Let's do here. Okay, watch me. Because with kids, you can line read them. You say, no, say it like this. And they will. They're great mimics. But if you say that to an adult actor, you're going to be out of a job. The point of me saying that is when James Earl Jones stepped up into the back porch of the set of Mr. Mertle's house and turned around to face the camera, in that short amount of time, he went from James Earl Jones to Mr. Mertle 100%. It was like just like this instantaneous transformation, you know, like he had reached a level where he was so confident and so good at everything that acting entails that it was all, I'm not going to say it was on automatic pilot, but you said genius, and he was. Yeah. That's my experience of him. And, you know, if that genius was, you know, 90% sweat equity and 10% talent, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
He was a remarkable man, and so remarkable that when I did the Sandlot 2, and the studio in their, you know, infinite wisdom decided to give me 1/3 the budget and less than half the time, I called James, and he still came out and played Mr. Mertle for me.
Unbelievable. Oh,
he was a great dude.
That's so David Mickey Evans is with us, of course, the writer, director, narrator of The Sandlot. I don't want to look, if James Earl Jones hadn't played Mr. Mertle, you still made a wonderful picture, right? Like everything about it. It's one of the greatest coming of age stories that I have ever seen in my life. That said, do you have a way to quantify what you think it meant for the film reaching the audience that it did and becoming the iconic piece of Americana that it has become, that was impacted by the fact that it was James Earl Jones and the entire film was able to build up to justice? I'm telling you, I still get chills thinking about it. Like the being a kid and the first time, like, to me as a kid, James Earl Jones was God, right? Like,
oh, listen, Glenn, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'll tell you this story is, before he came out onto the set, I was told, and I think I witnessed a little bit of this. Everybody was on the cell, their sets were outside, and he was at the lunch truck or whatever having, it might have been breakfast. He might have been having a bowl of oatmeal.
Okay.
I think that was it. And he's just sitting there all by himself. It's James Earl Jones sitting all by himself. So the way it worked is you could actually see him from the field. So me and the boys are standing over there, and I can see these guys all, like, you know, whispering to each other and pointing and staring in Mr. Jones's direction. And finally, well, the youngest kid was Shane Obazinski, but the littlest kid was Marty York. Okay. Mm-hmm. But Marty, he was a little dude, but he had a big heart, still does. And he was game for anything as a kid. Right. So they all gave him some papers and a pen and said, go over there, get his autograph and go see if it's him. So Marty walks over there, and I'm watching him, man. And the closer he gets, the slower he starts walking. Right. And he's standing next to Mr. Jones, who's seated and still towering over Marty. And Marty looks up at him and goes, "Are you James Earl Jones?" He goes, No. He says, "Are you Darth Vader?" And James Earl Jones looks down at him and goes, "No, I am your father."
Oh, God! That's so cool.
Staring at this guy like, what? And then he got it. You know, it took a minute to process. And he just started losing it. That's just one of the really endearing stories about the whole time. And listen, I had Mr. Jones for one day.
Yeah.
Everything you see in the movie, we shot in one day because that was the deal, you know?
All right, so but first of all, I could listen to you tell that story for the rest of my life. That's the coolest story that I've ever heard. But I
didn't answer your question though.
No, and that's do you have because I don't know if it can be quantified, right? Because it genuinely, it's still a great picture no matter what. But it feels to me like the power of that scene and that being built up did probably play at least somewhat of a significant role in why it became such an iconic film.
There's no question that that's true. And, I mean, look, they're called movie stars for a reason. There are movie stars that are just movie stars. There are actors that are great actors. And there are very few people who, well, very few. I'd say it's pretty rarefied air where the people that are both live. And James Earl Jones was both. So people forever have gone to the movies to see their favorite movie star. Nobody goes because, this AD'd it or this costume designer's, nothing like that. And then they certainly weren't going to go see it because I directed it. I was nobody, So when you have somebody that carries that kind of gravitas, that kind of love that the worldwide audience has for that actor, there is no question that if that had been, let's say, just a really good actor and who went in and nailed the role,
Right.
did a great job,
Right.
that would have been terrific, like you're saying. But no, that's James Earl Jones. He was larger than life on screen. He was literally larger than life, and I'd say his persona, both personal and professional, and he was a big man, all befit that character. I mean, I learned this as I went along. I didn't know it in the writing, but when he showed up, it all fit. The cogs all sort of meshed, and it was right that there was this, a very big man. He was a professional baseball player in his younger days and stuff. So it all made sense. But that it was James Earl Jones that, everybody in the world loves, who had done 10, 15 absolutely iconic roles in movie and entertainment history. Yeah, it had a big effect.
By the way, what you're talking about, it strikes me, right? Like the ability to convey the power of the fear that the boys felt as they were approaching the house. And like he can convey that, right? Because you talk about his size and he was just an imposing figure, but then the gentleness of Mr. Mertle ultimately, you're right. Like, yes, there are probably other actors that could have conveyed that, but my God, like everything about what Mr. Mertle was supposed to be, it seems the humorous part to me is that like I wouldn't have been stunned if you had said, "Dude, it was always my dream that James Earl Jones was going to be the guy." It just feels like it was such a fit that James Earl Jones would be the guy.
Well, you know what? You're absolutely right. And there were so many things like that on that picture. And it was I'd been fired off my first picture. So this one was like, that's it. Everybody in Hollywood gets 2 chances. Nobody gets a third. So when he showed up on my set, he has no idea and had never had any idea. I'm not going to say it was a tsunami, but it was definitely a wave of relief that I knew that anything this guy is going to do is going to be good. It's just going to be good. The kids, I had to watch them every second.
Yeah.
Yeah,
of course.
And guide them and all like that. And then eventually, after a couple of weeks, they sort of got the thing, and I let them go, and they were just sort of themselves. But yeah, I've had, if I look about it, I had him for one day on the Sandlot 1 and one day on the Sandlot 2. And
pretty damn good days.
A large impact on my career, just putting it lightly. Okay.
Pretty damn good days, man. If anyone else had 2 days, right? Those are about as good a days as you could possibly imagine, man. And you made history in the process. That is
yeah.
By the way, just the part where you said that like you could just pick up the phone and call James Earl Jones afterwards. Like that's gotta be like when you do that. The first, I'm like, am I really? Is it okay that I'm doing this? Did you go through?
No, Glenn, that's so funny because when I did, I flashed back to a moment I had in college when I needed to write a short film for an assignment, and I found a Roald Dahl short story.
Okay.
And I needed the rights, so I called Roald Dahl. And he talked to me for like a half an hour.
What?
This is in like the early 80s. I was dumbfounded that the New Yorker, I think it was, gave me his phone number, and I called him.
Wow.
And he talks to me. He's very encouraging. I'm a college student, blah, blah, blah. And I say to him at the end, Mr. Dahl, can I call you again, maybe for some advice? And he said to me, and he's in London now, and I was in Southern California. He goes, yes, David, absolutely. But for God's sake, not at 3 a.m.
That's amazing.
Oh, I looked at my watch. I was like, oh, God.
That's amazing.
I blew it.
That's amazing.
So, yeah, it was like that. Yeah. Look, that was a kind of a gift, right? It was definitely a blessing and a gift that I could. And I never, ever, ever, ever abused that privilege. Yeah. And it was a privilege.
David Mickey Evans, I am so grateful that you were willing to spend some time this morning reflecting, and I will always be grateful, and I've told you this before, you made a piece of art that it now impacts my life as a father. Like how you've bettered
Oh, man.
how you've
Wow.
bettered my life is something that I will never be able to thank you enough for, because it truly is a part of my existence as a dad now, and part of why my boys have fallen in love with baseball and want to go out and play and want to have their own memories and things like that. So I am eternally grateful for that, and I really genuinely appreciate you telling us these stories about James Earl Jones this morning, my friend.
I need to go next door to get another house for my giant ego right now, Glenn.
Dude, no, stop, brother. If you know, people
I've never been complimented like that before. My God, well, my work anyway. So thank you very much.
You don't
made
understand.
my day, brother.
In this town, people like associate me. That's how much I care about this. Like it's emotional for me, man. It really is emotional. And I'm grateful for this. Let's do this again soon. Thank you for taking the time.
Oh man, absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
David,
I appreciate it very much.
Absolutely, man. David Mickey Evans. Yo. There's cool. And then there's that. That is a different level of cool, man. Like that is a special level of cool. I could listen to David Mickey Evans tell James Earl Jones stories. Yeah, approaching James Earl Jones. And oh, God. No, I am your father. Ah, God. That's cool, man. I'm sorry. I'm geeking out, dude. I really am. You guys know how much The Sandlot means to me. We did an entire summer. You guys remember, we did an entire summer of the show around The Sandlot and talking to all the kids. The kids, obviously they're definitely not kids anymore. But we did an entire summer of content around The Sandlot because that's how much that film means to me. And it is part of the romantic feelings that I have about James Earl Jones. Look, everybody knows I'm not the biggest Star Wars person, but it's not like I didn't. Come on, man. Like, that's in context. Like, of course, I watch and enjoyed Star Wars. It's just that I'm not, the 10 that some of you are. I do have a soft place in my heart for The Lion King, though. Like, The Lion King does have a little bit more power over me. But man, for me, it's Mr. Mertle. It's that scene. It's that everything builds to this moment and everything that he conveys within, to the point, one scene. It's incredible. It's the story of the power of a genius. And James Earl Jones was truly a genius. And we were so fortunate to be able to watch his art. Oh man, that ruled. I in fairness, I'd rather do that for 30 minutes or 50 minutes or 6 hours.
Well, it's so funny how like it mirrors the kids first going up to him, are you Darth Vader? And just kind of how that's exactly how it happened in the movie. They don't
know what they're getting. They go up to the house thinking that it's going to be this terrifying human. And then to the point, the brilliance of James Earl Jones is when you see him, you are still kind of terrified of him. He's Darth Vader. And yet, the lessons that he taught them in that short span of time, it's perfection. Absolute perfection.